On January 6, 2002, the tranquil town of Truro, Massachusetts, was shattered by the brutal murder of Christa Worthington, a renowned fashion writer. Worthington, who had moved to Cape Cod to seek a quieter life and raise her daughter, was found raped, beaten, and fatally stabbed in her home. Her 2-year-old daughter, Ava, was discovered unharmed beside her lifeless body. This heinous crime not only shocked the local community, but also drew national attention due to its complexity and the high-profile nature of the victim. Christa Worthington was born on December 23, 1956, and grew up in a privileged environment. She graduated from Vassar College and quickly made a name for herself in the fashion industry. Worthington worked for prominent publications such as Women's Wear Daily, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, and the New York Times. Her career was marked by her insightful writing and her ability to capture the essence of fashion trends. Despite her professional success, Worthington sought a change of pace and moved to Truro in 1997, hoping to find solace and a nurturing environment for her daughter. In Truro, Worthington's life took on a different rhythm. She lived in a quaint cottage and became a devoted mother to her daughter, Ava. Born in May 1999, Worthington's decision to relocate was driven by her desire to provide a stable and serene upbringing for her child. However, her move to this small town also brought her into contact with various individuals who would later become entangled in the investigation of her murder. On January 6, 2002, the small town of Truro, Massachusetts, was rocked by the discovery of Christa Worthington's lifeless body in her home. Tim Arnold, a neighbor and former boyfriend, found Worthington lying face up in a hallway off the kitchen with her 2-year-old daughter, Ava, unharmed but covered in her mother's blood beside her. Worthington had been brutally beaten and stabbed in the chest, with the knife wound so deep that it nicked the floor beneath her. Arnold, unable to locate a phone in Worthington's house, ran back through the woods to his father's house next door to make the emergency call. The 911 call he placed brought first responders to a grisly scene marked by drying blood and signs of a violent struggle. The crime scene of Christa Worthington's murder was a grim and chaotic tableau that left an indelible mark on the small town of Truro, Massachusetts. Worthington was found in her home on January 6, 2002, by her neighbor and former boyfriend, Tim Arnold. She had been beaten and stabbed once in the chest, with the knife wound so deep that it nicked the floor beneath her. Her 2-year-old daughter, Ava, was found unharmed but covered in her mother's blood, a poignant and heartbreaking detail that underscored the brutality of the crime. The scene inside the house was equally disturbing. A cordless phone was missing, and Worthington's cell phone was found with the digit 9 punched in, suggesting she had attempted to dial 911 before succumbing to her injuries. The investigation into Worthington's murder was extensive and complex, drawing significant media attention and putting the entire male population of Truro under scrutiny. Initially, the police focused on individuals close to Worthington, including Tim Arnold and Tony Jackett, the father of her child. Both men had complicated relationships with Worthington, and their connections made them prime suspects in the early stages of the investigation. However, neither man's DNA matched the evidence found at the crime scene, leading investigators to broaden their search. A critical breakthrough came when the district attorney ordered DNA samples from over 800 men in the Truro area. This massive undertaking eventually led to the identification of Christopher McCowen, a local garbage collector, as the suspect. McCowen's DNA matched the samples found on Worthington's body, and he was arrested in April 2005. Christopher McCowen's arrest came as a surprise to many. McCowen, a 33-year-old garbage collector, had voluntarily submitted his DNA to the police a year earlier. He initially denied knowing Worthington, but later admitted to having a brief acquaintance with her through his work. McCowen's narrative of the events leading up to the murder changed multiple times, adding to the complexity of the case. Christopher McCowen's police interview, conducted on April 14, 2005, at the State Police Barracks in South Yarmouth, Massachusetts, became a crucial and controversial element in the Christa Worthington murder case. During this extensive 6-hour interrogation, McCowen consistently denied killing or raping Worthington, despite admitting to having had sexual contact with her. The interview, which resulted in a 27-page police report, became a point of contention between the prosecution and defense during the trial, with each side arguing over its significance and reliability. The confession, as reported by police, included McCowen placing himself at Worthington's house around the time of her death. According to the police report, McCowen stated that he and a friend, Jeremy Fraser, were at Worthington's home when an argument broke out, leading to both of them beating Worthington. McCowen allegedly told police that Fraser lost it and that he just followed suit, describing the scene as pandemonium. However, McCowen maintained that it was Fraser who had stabbed Worthington, not himself. The trial of Christopher McCowen for the murder of Christa Worthington began in October 2006 and was marked by intense scrutiny and high drama. McCowen, a 34-year-old garbage collector, was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated burglary. The prosecution's case hinged on DNA evidence that linked McCowen to the crime scene, as well as his inconsistent statements during police interrogations. Despite the damning evidence, McCowen maintained his innocence, claiming that his confession was coerced and that he had been under the influence of drugs during the police interview. The defense team, led by attorney Robert George, sought to undermine the prosecution's case by highlighting the alleged coercion of McCowen's confession and questioning the reliability of the DNA evidence. They argued that McCowen's low IQ made him susceptible to manipulation during the police interrogation. Additionally, the defense pointed to the presence of unidentified DNA at the crime scene, suggesting that someone else could have been involved in the murder. They also raised concerns about racial bias, noting that McCowen, an African American, was an easy target for the predominantly white jury and community. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Robert Welsh, presented a compelling narrative of the events leading to Worthington's murder. They argued that McCowen had a sexual encounter with Worthington, which turned violent when she resisted his advances. The prosecution emphasized the DNA evidence found on Worthington's body and at the crime scene, which matched McCowen's profile. They also pointed to McCowen shifting stories during police interviews as indicative of his guilt. The prosecution dismissed the defense's claims of racial bias and coercion, arguing that the evidence against McCowen was overwhelming and conclusive. Throughout the trial, the jury heard testimony from various witnesses, including police officers, forensic experts, and individuals who knew both Worthington and McCowen. The emotional testimony from Worthington's friends and family painted a picture of a loving mother, an accomplished writer whose life was tragically cut short. The defense's attempts to cast doubt on the prosecution's case were met with skepticism by the jury, who found the DNA evidence and McCowen's inconsistent statements particularly persuasive. On November 16, 2006, the jury found Christopher McCowen guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated burglary. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the community, but it also left lingering questions about the fairness of the trial and the potential influence of racial bias. McCowen's subsequent appeals and motions for a new trial have been denied, but his case continues to be a topic of debate and analysis, highlighting the complexities and challenges of the criminal justice system. Christopher McCowen's interview with ABC News 2020 has marked a significant moment in the Christa Worthington murder case, as it was the first time he spoke out on broadcast television since his conviction in 2006. During the interview, McCowen maintained his innocence, stating, "I'm not guilty of anything. This is a nightmare for me." He addressed the speculation surrounding the timeline of Worthington's death and expressed regret for not testifying during his trial, a decision his current attorney, Gary Pelletier, said McCowen now wants to rectify by getting his story out there. In the interview, McCowen provided his account of his interaction with Worthington, explaining that he knew her from his garbage collection route. He claimed that on the Thursday before her body was discovered, Worthington invited him into her house to look at her Christmas tree. McCowen stated, "It just like it was just a mutual thing between two people, I guess. We started kissing, then we ended up having sex." He insisted that this sexual encounter was consensual and occurred only once, maintaining that he did not return to her house after that Thursday and was not responsible for her death. McCowen's interview with 2020 also touched on the controversial aspects of his case, including the DNA evidence that linked him to the crime scene and his disputed confession to the police. While prosecutors presented these elements as overwhelming evidence of his guilt, McCowen's defense has long argued that his confession was coerced and that he was unable to understand what was happening during his police interview due to his low intelligence and alleged intoxication. The interview provided McCowen with a platform to address these issues and present his side of the story, though he maintained that he didn't remember talking with police or what he told them during the interrogation. The conviction of Christopher McCowen for the murder of Christa Worthington has been shrouded in controversy, with significant arguments both for and against his guilt. One of the primary points of contention is the lack of physical evidence directly linking McCowen to the act of murder. While his DNA was found on Worthington's body, suggesting a sexual encounter, there were no fingerprints, witnesses, or murder weapon tying him to the crime scene. Critics, including author Peter Manso, have highlighted these gaps, arguing that the prosecution's case relied heavily on the jury's disbelief that a well-to-do, educated white woman would consensually engage with McCowen, a black garbage collector. This narrative has fueled claims that racial bias played a significant role in his conviction, casting doubt on the fairness of the trial process. Further complicating the case are the allegations of police misconduct during McCowen's interrogation. McCowen's defense argued that his confession was coerced, pointing to his low IQ and the stressful, prolonged nature of the 6-hour police interview, which was not recorded but summarized in a 27-page report. This has raised questions about the reliability of his statements, with his defense suggesting that McCowen may have been manipulated into confessing to a crime he did not commit. The defense also pointed out that McCowen's narrative changed multiple times, which they argued was a result of his susceptibility to police pressure rather than an indication of guilt. Additionally, the issue of racial bias during jury deliberations has been a significant factor in the ongoing debate over McCowen's conviction. Reports of racist remarks and behavior among jurors have surfaced, with some jurors coming forward to allege that they were pressured into a guilty verdict. These allegations were serious enough to warrant a rare public hearing in 2008, where the Massachusetts Superior Court judge acknowledged the potential impact of racial bias, but ultimately upheld McCowen's conviction. The murder of Christa Worthington remains a poignant and complex case that highlights the challenges of criminal investigations and the impact of violent crime on a community. Worthington's life, marked by professional success and personal tragedy, serves as a reminder of the fragility of human existence. As the years pass, the memory of her murder continues to linger, prompting reflections on justice, the legal system, and the search for truth.